The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
The music doesn't want to stop.
The camera's sideways over there. So I gotta, well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And we're getting a profile here. But that's
No, you're not.
all right, there we go. Now I'm in the center. All right, well, we got a lot to talk about today, I guess. Oh,
Yeah, we had a primary yesterday.
Big primary. Big
And guess what? It was shocking results.
Shocking.
Trump won. I mean, amazingly shocking.
But did he?
Well, yeah, that's the big question. But did he? And of course, Hillary did. After all, her husband violated the law and decided to walk into a polling place.
Doesn't he have a presidential exemption that they don't?
Well,
have to,
you know,
they don't have to abide by the election laws, and you know, he can like walk into a polling place and be less than 150 feet away.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's interesting because people are asking for his arrest, which we know will never happen.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, and Bill Galvin will never do any of that. As a matter of fact, Bill Galvin said there was no violation. It was a traffic issue. Excuse me, you're standing in the doorway to the polling place. I think there's a violation. But again, you know, we know this from during the recall where Bill Galvin said, "Oh no, that's not our job. That's somebody else's." It's amazing how in state government it's always somebody else's job.
One of the most useless people we've ever had in there.
Yeah, well,
totally useless. Doesn't do anything. And I'm sure that he would have probably carried Clinton into the polling place.
I'm sure
if he was asked and not considered it a violation. But you know, this is a really great election cycle, probably the greatest I've ever seen, because it truly reaffirms something that I've always known, but it gives us evidence that these parties, you know, they talk about we can't, you know, whether you like Bernie Sanders or not, or whether you like Donald Trump or not, you know, and Bernie Sanders is a socialist, and they're talking about socialists, but I think maybe the parties are socialists because it's pretty clear that both parties do not like a particular person who's in the race. And they've made it very clear that no matter what happens, Bernie Sanders isn't going to get the nomination at the convention. And also, I mean, last night it was appalling to watch Paul Ryan and everybody already beginning to say, basically to the people, and the people of the Republican Party, that, listen, we can't have Donald Trump as our nominee. Well, really? Really? So what are you saying, Republican Party and Democratic Party? That for all these years you've only let the people think that they select who they want to be the presidential nominee? That the only reason that we were allowed to have that presidential nominee was it was somebody that you wanted also? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that this person will not go strictly by your agenda and your party line? This is the problem with America. We don't have representative parties anymore. Everything is partisan, and they're more concerned with the Republican agenda and party line than they are with representing the American people, and also the Democrats. So this really reaffirms a very, very clear fact. And I say to both parties and some of these national news media commentators, you wonder why people are angry? See, Fall River was ahead of the curve again. We've been telling them to stay angry now for a couple of years, and they have stayed angry and made some changes. And now the country's angry, and justifiably so. And the reality is that, listen, I don't care. You know, I had a conversation with a friend, and he said, you know, there are a lot of people that don't want Donald Trump as president. And I said, you're right. But the fact is that this is supposed to be the rule by the majority. And if it isn't, this really isn't the nation that it's portrayed to be. The fact is, if the majority of Republican voters and crossover voters want Donald Trump as the nominee, he should be the nominee. And you know, the party better suck it up and get and realize that, because, you know, I mean, look, I voted Republican very rarely. I voted for Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt, you know, and they were Republicans of a bygone era. But the fact is that, you know, this disturbs me because, you know, this is supposed to be a country for the people, by the people, and of the people, and it's not of the people. When we don't get, when they are so blatantly clear that they totally don't care what we think, that they know what's right. Well, it sounds a lot like when a city council says, well, the hell with the citizens of Fall River. We don't care if they don't want increased fees and taxes. We know better. And this is one of the problems we have. This is the reason that people are angry and that people want to change government. And it, you know, this primary may be the beginning of a split in the Republican Party that will never be, you know, I mean, I think maybe Bernie Sanders is going to become a moot point. I think he is not going to be the nominee. He's not going to get the votes. But it still doesn't take away the fact that they were prepared not to give it to him if he did win. So Democratic voters, remember that. That's why I've always been an independent and unenrolled. Party systems are basically party systems. It's kind of like the Socialist Party. And the reality is that, look, we should make the decision. And yesterday's primary, I think, was a pretty clear indication that there's a very, very good chance that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. So let's all sit back and see what the Republican Party does about it.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, when I look at the top 5 cities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which are Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Lowell, and Cambridge. Yes, Fall River is no longer one of the top 5 cities. Again, we're coming in last.
Population-wise, yes.
Yeah, population-wise. But the People's Republic of Cambridge came out with...
People's Republic.
Well, we're the People's Republic of Fall River, so 53.3% voted for Clinton, 46.3% voted for Sanders. I'm surprised at that vote, to be honest, because I figured the People's Republic of Cambridge would be more slanted towards Sanders. But on the Republicans, this speaks volumes of the People's Republic of Cambridge. Kasich got 34%, Rubio 29%, Trump 25%, and Cruz 6.8%. Okay? I think it's Cruz's hyper-religious background that, you know, done him in there. But, you know, when you look at some of those results, and these are from the New York Times, by the way, in Boston, population 645,000, Clinton came in 57.5%, Sanders 41.5%, Republicans, Trump 40.8%. Rubio 24.1, Kasich 22, Cruz 9.6. Worcester, a city that I wish we could, duplicate their charter here in Fall River, but our charter commission is too stupid to look at it appropriately. You have Clinton came in at 50.4% and Sanders 48.3%. The Republicans, they came in 49% for Trump, Rubio 17.4%, Kasich 14.5%, and Cruz 12.8%. You know, this speaks volumes to the electorate, and it speaks volumes to the elected officials. Guess what? The people don't care what you have to say. They want you to say what they want, and that's your job. The Constitution says that your power comes from us, comes from me. And if you can't do your job, if you can't do what I tell you to do, what the people tell you to do, quit, resign, get out of it. Because you know what? It's sad. Now, in Fall River, when we look at it, Clinton got 5,878 votes. Sanders got 4,300 on the Democratic side. You know, Fall River's happy. They got 30% of the people out to vote. I almost vomited when I heard 30%. I'm like, wow. They came out 30% for that. You would think that you would come out 75 or 80. but 30, and people are happy that we got 30. So, not too thrilled about that. But, in Fall River, Trump got 2,229 votes for 63% of the electorate. Okay, 63%. Rubio got 486 votes for 13%, and Cruz got 364 votes for 10%. Kasich got 290 votes, and Ben Carson got 132 for 4%. That should speak a little bit to you. And when you think about it, it's kind of sad, all right? We know that the Republican Party came out of a division from the Whigs. For those of you who like history, you know that that's where the Republican Party came from, to abolish slavery. But the Democratic Party said, no. We want to keep them dumb. We want to keep them stupid. We want to keep them barefoot, and we want to keep them as slaves. And they still do that to this day. They keep the Democratic Party followers as slaves. You're either a slave to the system, you're a slave to benefit packages and entitlements, or you're a slave to the party, because the party has come out publicly, not only here in Massachusetts, but across the United States, that Bernie Sanders, regardless of the votes, regardless of what the people said, will not become the nominee, because the superdelegates are going to do what we want, and the superdelegates outweigh the vote of the people. So you have a select group of Democrats who are, quote unquote, party long-haul supporters and have built and maintained this party, built and maintained slavery.
Yeah, well, some people, I've had conversations with people who say they have to do what's best for the party. Well, I disagree. They have to do what's best for the people.
Doesn't that sound almost like Russia?
The party is supposed to represent the people. So, and that's one of the problems. And we segue into another one of our issues here. Our Democratic state legislature is entertaining a bill to repeal time and a half on Sundays. So there's our party, supposedly the quote-unquote working man's party. And we have this guy, John Hurst. He's the president of the Retailers Association. So, they talk about Republicans dealing with big money people. Well, the Democrats kowtow too. Every once in a while they throw a crumb to the working man, but then what they do is they'll
take it somewhere else.
They'll ultimately take it from somewhere else. Now, this guy is talking about the internet, and his reason was that they have to deal with compete against these warehouses, consumer-driven economies, and faceless robots working. It's difficult for them to compete against online businesses who staff faceless robots in their warehouses. Well, guess what? The no on the getting rid of the time and a half is some guy that's worked, Scott Mazansky, who's been a working for Macy's, loyal and hardworking for 22 years. And he says it's incredibly hard. I've worked incredibly hard at Macy's, and I have to spend many nights and weekends away from my family. And, the time and a half, should be there because you're working in excess of your normal hours. So here again, screw the working man, and it doesn't matter what party. Money always trumps it. We said follow the money, and that's one of the reasons. The people who give money to politicians, a lot of money, not a little minor donation, always get preferential treatment. That's one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders is popular, because the fact is that he's right. The top 15 men and the 15 richest men in the United States made more than the bottom 3 million or something like that. And, that's just, that's one of the fundamentals. And they say that, there's equity here. There's no equity. They've eliminated the middle class, and both parties, granted. The Republicans give a lot more to the rich. I've always said the difference between a Republican and a Democrat is the Republicans steal from the working man and give most of it to the rich, while the Democrats steal from the working man and give them a tiny bit back. But the Democrats do the same thing. I mean, here we are, getting rid of time and a half on Sunday. Well, something? Maybe this guy probably doesn't work on Sunday, And if he's working on Sunday, he's probably making $200 or $300 a year. While this poor bugger that's working for probably barely above minimum wage, you're not going to give him a time and a half. This guy probably could pay time and a half for his entire business with his weekly salary if he had everybody on time and a half on Sunday. It's just ridiculous. This is the problem we have in this nation. We've allowed big business, and the parties have allowed big business to control our economy. And what they do is, and there's no control. They've allowed big business to remain in the United States while they do half of their manufacturing outside the United States. And what do they use again? Well, they use the fact that faceless robots, well, they may not be faceless. They may be semi-slave labor in Bangladesh or in China or in now Africa, because China's even losing some of its manufacturing because the Chinese workers are beginning to ask for a little bit of a pay raise. And, you know, this is the whole problem.
Better be careful in China. They're going to put them in front of, going to put them down at Tiananmen Square.
The problem with this is that, you know, big business always had a plan. I've got a book that was written over 50 years ago about multinational banks saying that we should have rich and poor, and we should have a universal wage. Everybody throughout the world who's a worker should basically make the same wage. And that way they can control everything. And it's always been about controlling the masses. And the thing that bothers me is that the masses should not be controlled. The masses have to educate themselves and get angry, and I'm happy. You know, I had the get angry slogan long before these national media said the reason people are acting like this is they're angry. That's why I say stay angry. Don't just get angry, stay angry. Because, you know, you can't control the majority unless the majority allows itself to be controlled. When we vote as a group in our own best interests, we control government. If we don't do that, well, they control government. And, you know, to both the Republican and Democratic Party, shame on you to call yourself a political party that's representative of the people, and then say you are not going to accept the people's choice for your nominee. So this, again, as I said, remember one thing: you can be angry, stay angry. I encourage it. But the fact is, remember, when we get a crappy government, it's our fault. Because the fact is, there are more of us than there are of them. And they may have the money, but we have the votes when we stick together. This is the reason they try to break us down by pitting us against each other with all these peripheral issues like, oh, this guy wants to take away your gun. Oh, this guy is not in favor of pro-choice, or he's pro-this. Well, those issues they are important to a lot of people. But the fact is, control of the government by the people is the major issue that we have to face. And we can control it, because united we stand and divided we fall. And the reality is that we have never stood united. And let's hope that if Donald Trump gets the nomination, that the people of the United States force the Republican Party. And you know something? If he doesn't get the nomination and runs as an independent, he may very well win. And if he doesn't win, he will put such a dent in whatever Republican nominee that the people didn't want, that Hillary will walk in the White House.
But, you know, it's interesting because I think that maybe, you know, when Bernie Sanders does not, and I'm sorry to say this, but when he does not get the nomination, he should also consider a run for under the independent ticket, because you know what? It's giving the people a choice. I have no problem with giving the people a choice. What they're hoping for in the Democratic Party is get Hillary in as the nominee, and then she turns around and she'll slam, for better or for worse, you know, Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has already got his war plan created to do her in beyond any means whatsoever. And I think that that's going to be an issue that they're going to have to truly face, because it's not going to be an easy one. But
Well, what a ticket that would be, CJ. Wouldn't that be an amazing, that'd be the greatest ticket since George Wallace and Curtis LeMay. You know, it would be like, imagine that, we'd have a capitalist running for president, and the vice presidential nominee would be a socialist.
right.
So there we have it. That's the perfect ticket. You have the thesis and the antithesis, and between the two of them, if they got in a room, we might get something in the middle, which is great.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, that might be a great ticket. Talk
Well,
about Hegel's theory.
Yeah, I just got a lovely invite to attend a Next Generation Learning. Actually, you received this invite as well, with Senator Warren. Imagine that.
Oh, boy.
At Clark University. I don't think I'm interested.
Oh,
but you know, it's very interesting to see how this is panning out.
Can I bring my headdress?
But let's move on a little bit to, because we don't have a lot of time left here. I'm surprised how fast this show flies sometimes. The mayor introduced the new neighborhood coordinator, liaison, whatever he may be. And I'm going to get a copy of his resume, because supposedly he was a chief of staff for somebody in Rhode Island, which means he was on the Rhode Island payroll. But you see, it's very interesting when you start going to look into the Rhode Island payroll, when you find out what people actually did for a job. And the gentleman who has the job is Anthony Tyrell Robinson. In reviewing videos and pictures of the inauguration, Mr. Robinson was there at the inauguration. So this is a relationship that goes back a little bit. Now, Mr. Robinson is known to or affiliated with City Councilor Steve Camara. And according to what was presented to the neighborhood leaders yesterday, I believe it was, or most recently, is that he was a chief of staff for a politician or somebody in Rhode Island. Well, according to the Rhode Island public records that I found immediately before the show, which I could only get into the 2014 records, I got to look at 2015. He was a legislative aide making $14,000 and change a year, and that's for the 2014 year. I've got to look for the 2015, but we'll say he made a little bit more. Now he's getting a job that pays somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year, and interestingly enough, the Committee on Ordinance that met yesterday talked about giving this guy tons of work. He's going to be chasing down the money for fees to be assessed on vacant properties, and chasing down the deeds of foreclosed homes. And now it was proposed to put that money into a revolving fund. But of course, Councilor Linda Pereira said, no, we don't want to do that. We want that to go into the general fund. And Kathy Ann said, oh yeah, we can do that, because that will give us the freedom to spend more money on sealing up these buildings and making it available. Because if we really get into the enforcement portion, which, by the way, Ken Pacheco did say, the problem that we have in Fall River is that we don't enforce. Imagine that, like we didn't know that already. So we have to be very clear that, again, the city is looking for another way to make sure that you, the taxpayer, you, the resident, has to pay again. We find out during this Committee on Ordinance that the water fee is compared to places like Newport and East Greenwich, which have fees of $50 locally and $300 out of state. But according to the harbor master, who is the only paid individual in his department, we can't charge an out-of-state fee here. Well, if you go to a beach in Rhode Island, guess what? You got to pay an out-of-state fee for that. You pay like $20 more. But we can't do that in Massachusetts. Well, I find that kind of interesting, because guess what? If you're an out-of-state student here at BCC, you pay a higher tuition, and that's a fee.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, look, they always figure out a way to hit the people, and it's not going to help. And as I think I was speaking to someone before the show, and I guess Mike Lund showed up to speak on that.
Yes, he did.
And he said that you can't charge those kind of fees, because these other places that charge a higher fee, and for their residents maybe even a lower fee, that they have amenities that come along with it that we don't. So you're going to pay a higher fee to come to Fall River so you can moor your boat and come into the the most crime-ridden, drug-infested city in the area, and you're going to pay more than you did if you can moor your boat in Newport.
Right.
Really? And, the fact is that, look, this is, and it's amazing how, the old saying that figures don't lie, but liars can figure. Isn't it amazing that we're using these little tiny, tiny towns like East Greenwich and Newport
And Tiverton.
Because those fees will suit your argument.
Right.
Not cities of our size, not cities that and a similar demographic, because number one, the thing they don't remember is the fact that, we have the lowest income in the city. So what's the ratio of taxes
You're
and
so
fees?
negative, Chip.
It's well, no, it's it's a fact, because it proves one very simple thing. Figures don't lie, but liars
Yes.
can figure. And you can figure out, give me a bunch of numbers, and I can figure out a way to support the positive argument or the negative argument. The only way that you're not manipulating figures to support a position is when you present all the figures to the people and let's compare with cities of similar demographics, of similar income, and of similar size. Then it's a valid comparison. And when you put all the numbers on the table, I wish I had that option, because I would have, when I went to arbitration for a pay raise, I would have used Boston and Newton and actually what a lot of people may not realize is Logan Airport, which is a federal fire department, is one of the highest paid departments in the state of Massachusetts. But when I went into an arbitrator, if I put in Logan Airport, Boston, you know what he said? You can't use these figures. They're not a similar community. You have to use communities of a similar size, with similar size departments, and a similar financial, and I had to set up all the figures. I had to say average income with all these communities and list all the benefits. But I didn't have the luxury of going around. And it isn't amazing when they tax us, they figure out a way to give us the highest fees and the highest taxes. And when they give themselves a pay raise, they go to San Francisco and Los Angeles and say, oh, the mayor over there gets so much. And it's a con job, people. It's a con job.
The thing is that we had elected 5 city councilors, 5, okay, to make a change in Fall River. And it's not even 12 weeks into their job. Actually, it'll be 12 weeks this week. But they're already as bad, if not as worse than the previous council. I mean, even Pam LeBeau said, oh, well, I'm from Cape Cod, and, we have this, and I grew up with boats, and this and that. You know what? I don't care what you grew up with in Cape Cod. You're not in Cape Cod anymore.
Yeah, what's the average income in Cape Cod?
Right. But you know what's the funny part about it is? The average income in Cape Cod is much higher between Memorial Day and Labor Day than it is any other time of year. And the populations are smaller.
Yeah.
But again, they use those larger populations.
And somebody who sails his yacht down to Yarmouth or something like that doesn't worry about mooring fees.
No, they don't.
It's like somebody who's driving a $500,000 Lamborghini.
Right.
They don't worry about paying $800 for an oil change. So, let's mix apples with apples and oranges with oranges. These people are so full of crap, they're halfway back again. And that's why we tell you, stay educated, pay attention, and stay angry, because it's inexcusable what they do. And they always figure out a way to make us pay more and them to get a higher pay. So stay angry.
Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you on Friday. And remember, hold their feet to the fire. The mayor asked us to do it. I want us to do it now.
I can't wait to talk to Carlos about the new neighborhood liaison. They're probably best buddies already.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody.